Identity. Changing behaviors is relatively easy, in the short term. Anyone can stop smoking for a few days, start a new diet or turn off the television for a week. The biggest hindrance to permanent habit change is often at a far deeper level than conditioning or even pain and pleasure reach. The fundamental obstacle in making a long-term change is identity. Your identity is simply the answer to this question. Who are you? The ego has a fundamental desire for self-preservation. Protecting what you believe is part of your identity is a basic human need, even if that identity is negative, destructive and inaccurate. If you feel that you are an overweight person, that is different than having a few extra pounds. A person who has just a few extra pounds can lose them fairly easily. Someone who sees themselves as an overweight person never will. Changing your identity may seem like a drastic step. This belief is also the reason so many people fail to create long-term change. Most people believe that it is far more difficult to change who you are deep down than it is to change a behavior. So as a result, most people try to work on their behaviors without working on who they see themselves at the core. As a result, the need for an overweight person to be overweight subconsciously ruins all of their progress. And shift in your self-image or identity isn't really as hard as it sounds. The fact is, you've been doing it all your life. Think about when you were little, chances are you saw yourself as a kid. Adults were the people who made the rules and were serious and boring about everything. As a child you defined your identity often in terms of your family and parents. Later when you became a teenager you began to see yourself as more independent. Suddenly you began shaping your definitions in terms of your friends, social groups or specific skills. As you got older and entered the workforce, chances are you started identifying yourself by your career. If someone asked, "What are you?" you would respond with, "A lawyer," or "doctor," or "business owner." If you have your own children now, chances are you identify yourself as being a father or mother. Your identity has been shifting constantly your entire life, so don't make it an excuse for preventing change. In order to make a truly dramatic change with regards to your identity you need to redefine yourself. If you were previously a smoker, you need to define yourself as someone who wouldn't even consider cigarettes. You must be the embodiment of the change you are trying to make. To do this you need to reorganize all of the elements of your life that reinforce your past identity. Organize your house in the way that this new person would live. Disassociate yourself from friends who reinforced your old identity and start associating with people that will encourage your new identity. Luckily, most habit changes don't require a complete rewrite of your identity. This method is only necessary when your core habits, beliefs and behaviors completely conflict with the process of changing. Although the subject of identity and identity changes could be an entire article series in itself, they are very important to mention in terms of changing habits. If you don't see yourself as the kind of person who can make the changes you desire, then you can't. In these cases a drastic readjustment of your identity may be necessary to effect the change you desire. I bring up identity because I don't want people to use that as an excuse. No matter who you are or who you believe you are, you can gain control. Leverage is uncomfortable. If you've been reading the series so far you may be wondering about my initial claim that changing habits is a skill that can become fun and even relatively easy with practice. You might have been reading this article and started to wonder why leverage sounds so difficult and painful. Utilizing leverage is often painful. The whole idea behind leverage is to create enough polarization between the pain of not following through on your conditioning and enough pleasure through your conditioning process to move forward even when you lack willpower. The more difficult the change, the more initially painful it can be, but also the more satisfying it is when you are successful. Successfully changing a difficult habit is a very encouraging experience, I can tell you. Changing habits can often require a little bit of pain initially. The fun comes from enjoying the challenge, however. When you start your first few habits, especially if they are big ones, this whole process may seem very difficult and not very fun. However, once you've applied these techniques to enough changes, and you have seen enough success, you will actually get pretty good at changing habits. As Kathy Sierra says, you will have crossed the suck threshold, and your skill at changing habits will give you an amazing degree of control over your life. So, if you are having trouble sticking to your habit conditioning process, try creating some leverage on yourself. Make a public commitment, set yourself up so you absolutely have to take action and put yourself on the line. Begin to associate massive pain to your current patterns and massive pleasure to the new change. If these techniques still aren't enough, you may need to take steps to redefine the identity you have that is stopping you. In my next article on replacement, I will discuss how we can smoothly and effectively replace our habits. If you change a habit the way most people do, it is like trying to perform delicate surgery with a baseball bat. Finding our scalpel involves recognizing the benefits and downsides of the habits we already have. Installing new habits that don't compensate for the function of the ones they were supposed to replace is a recipe for disaster. Using this process will help you identify unsustainable habit changes that won't work regardless of the conditioning involved, and allow you to make permanent change easier and more effective.